Today, top reliever Tanner Scott gets a phone call from the Mets. We talk about the possibility of him joining the squad, and we take a step back and discuss the overall offseason strategy the Mets have employed thus far. What is going on? My name is Flobo Boyce, and you're locked into Mets Digest, your one-stop shop for Mets content all around the planet. Myself, alongside Mike D'Angelo, work tirelessly to give you the news and notes you need. So thank you so much for rocking with me today. Before we get into today's top story, if you haven't done so already, do me a favor, like the video, share the video, comment, be part of that subscribe crew, not that not subscribe crew. Don't be that 76.7%. Let me know how you feel about the show and content. I do read all questions, positive or negative. I might not get to all of them, but I make sure I do read them because that's how we grow. And over 3,000 strong on the channel. Thank you so much. So, yes, the big story when it comes down to the offseason play is that Tanner Scott, one of the top relievers still available to be acquired, has had a little bit of a meeting with the Orange and Blue, David Stearns and company, where it really wants to make the call out and reach out to them, having a meeting over the past couple of days. Will Salmon at The Athletic was really the one that broke the story about a couple hours ago. As I record this, by the time you might get this, might be the day before or so. And what I think it's interesting is what it means for the bigger strategy. But before we get to that, let's talk about the actual inquiry into Mr. Scott. Quote, The Athletic's Tim Britton predicted Scott, a 30-year-old lefty, will receive 4 years, $64 million if he were to be signed by anyone. The fact that Mets are still looking to spend that kind of money is interesting to me. Mets president of baseball operations, David Stearns, and Stearns we trust, is not naturally inclined to go long on contracts of starting pitchers, which is something we thought we knew about the guy. But the best relievers command shorter deals. Still, it's all relative. A 3 or 4 year deal with the reliever is significant. Adding someone like Scott alongside a closer Edwin Diaz, however, would create a formidable back-end duo. And some of Stearns' most successful seasons in Milwaukee, the Brewers' bullpen featured a 1-2 punch late in games, whether it was the combination of Corey Knebel and Josh Hader or Hader and Devin Williams. And so, we're talking about the overall strategy with pitching, right? A month ago, or not even that, before that, it looked like going into the 2024 season, it was just like, hey, look, get some starters who are kind of reclamation projects and just trust our guys. And hopefully if next man up, if one guy fails, one guy can't cut the mustard, if, like a Jake Diekman, for example, we just kind of cut loose and we move the next guy up. And sometimes you may hit pay dirt. Daniel Nunez was going to be that guy until he had his injuries last season. And sometimes guys work out for a while, then don't, like an Adrian Hauser, and we kind of do the experimenting as we go. And it looks like probably for the benefit of the New York Mets, we're not doing that. In fact, the fact that you're even going after someone who is a free agent like Tanner Scott shows that they're willing to go out and acquire if need be. You know what? I'm not even going to go on to my next point until I bring up the numbers here. Make sure you have an idea of what it looks like. Tanner Scott had a very much a stellar year last year. Look at that ERA. It's a sub-2. And even though he's only 30 years old, it's kind of on the not young but not old era. So a 3 or 4 year deal could benefit him if he were to acquire that. And so the very nature of the idea of the Mets doing business with Scott is exciting because that really was one of the question marks, or one of the multiple question marks we had going to the offseason. We got Juan Soto. What does the outfield look like, even though we acquired Jose Siri as well? What does it look like day to day? And what's going to be with our middle infield and our 1A starting pitcher, if we do get that, and our relief squad, our bullpen core, if that would be the case. And so he slots in perfectly. Definitely someone who can have some innings, someone who can really command a strike. So basically played high-stakes baseball coming off of seasons with the Rays and the Padres. And so all things are positive across the board. Well, again, what gives me pause about this is exactly what does it mean to the overall strategy of the team, right? We talked about, okay, maybe Stearns is trying to go for like this. We're going to get these young guys and make sure our guys play. And we know Steve Cohen has this, or at least at one point, had this strategy of this goal of being a championship squad in 5 years, and this is year 5. So are we going for broke? Are we doing some more measured tactics? Are we playing hard to get with Pete Alonso, whereas we are still in business with these high-ranking free agents to give them multiple-year deals? This right here, this particular courtship, whether or not we sign Scott or not, can really open up Pandora's box to see what is the Mets strategy as far as how are they going to get to the promised land of being a team that can compete every single season. Give a shout out to MLB Transactions that gives a bit more of the numbers when it comes to Scott. It says, quote, Scott's appeal is obvious in the numbers. Over the past 2 seasons, he has tossed 150 relief innings, allowing 2.04 earned runs per game per 9. His 10% walk rate over those years was a tad high, but he struck out 31.3% of batters faced and got grounders on up just a little bit more than half, 50.4% of balls in play. He also added 5 1/3 innings of scoreless postseason work over those seasons, which included 4 strikeouts of Shohei Ohtani in last year's NLDS. And even though I hate to say it, and I hate when Dodgers fans or Padres fans say it, that was the most competitive series the Dodgers faced during their playoff run. Yeah, I do think we did a better team. I think we were a stronger team. Hate the fact that Fox made it look like we were the grimmest company squad. But that 5-game series between LA and San Diego was close. And be able to make Shohei Ohtani look like an absolute fool is kind of cool. And it's kind of interesting that, again, we're still in the market for that. You want someone who's good, someone who's having a great year, and someone who knows about high-stakes ball, because as it is right now, if you want to be a world champion, you have to go through Los Angeles. That's just kind of the nature of the game. So one of the interesting things about that, though, is about whether or not we do hang with Tanner Scott, because again, he hasn't really signed, is how serious we are. Are we just kicking the tires here, or are we trying to go all in? The Athletic article that mentions this meeting actually continues about the idea of what the Mets are going to do moving forward as we hit past the offseason equinox into the next season. Remember, it's only about 100 days or even less than that before we get to the 2025 season. The time for hemming and hawing is over. We have spring training in a couple weeks, and so you make sure that you have to have something on the wall that sticks. The Athletic article continues, quote, the Mets are in the mix for Roki Sasaki, even though people are saying that we're in the mix. We're not really a definite, but they're in the mix. Who was only subject to receiving money from a club's international bonus pool over about $7 million or so, depending on the club. They're without a bona fide ace. All right, shout out to Sean Manaea, and didn't get seriously involved with the most expensive, such as Corbin Burns, even though Corbin Burns looked like he wanted to go to Arizona just for funsies. But they have more depth than last year behind a rotation that features Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, and Frankie Montas. With the Mets looking to utilize 6 starters at times, it's possible either Griffin Canning or Paul Blackburn will claim the last spot, with the other operating as a long reliever. And we had mentioned the roster before, as it stands right now. That is, if Sasaki goes elsewhere, if Scott goes elsewhere, will this be enough to get us plus 6 games compared to last season? Don't want to sound like a pessimist, but a lot of question marks there if I'm being generous. Some will say no outright. I'm not saying no outright, and Stearns we trust. Maybe the magic will happen again. Maybe Candelita drops a new track. But that rotation is not something that's going to light the world on fire. And I'm not saying Tanner Scott is going to be someone to even change that perception. But the idea that we're not just going to go from within, and we're still looking to acquire from outside, even when the Pete Alonso sweepstakes are at a stalemate, even when we have an opportunity of not winning the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes, says there is an aggressive undertone, even though on the surface it looks like we're playing conservative ball when it comes to our roster construction. This is why I think this Tanner Scott situation is going to really be the thing we look back on and say, okay, are they about it as far as the team trying to win this year? Or is it kind of like we're going to slowly build and maybe, take the world by storm in 26, 28, 30 or what have you? Well, we'll see what happens there, because frankly, I'm a bit more confused. Let me ask you this. If you got to this point in the video, what do you think if Tanner Scott was on your desk as assistant general manager and David Stearns asked for your opinion? Would you sign him? Would you give him a look? Or would you just do what the Mets did as of right now and just kick the tires and see what's available and see if he's down to clown? I'm really curious to what you think. We have so many bodies already signed, so you wouldn't be necessarily wrong for staying pat if you're at 17 in blackjack, for those of you who play the game. But if you want to say hit me and roll the dice with Tanner Scott, let me know if you would and why in the comments below. Ladies and gentlemen, you've reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Again, my name is Flobo Boyce. You may see me on the internet. I have a blog called justasandwich.com where I take the comedic look at sports. And I'm also a contributor at the Black Baseball Mixtape website and podcast, but that's not promotion for me. Until next time, as always, it's LGM to the bitter end.